Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of A Wrestling Doesn't Make Sense. It's a show where me and John go back through wrestling history, I guess, and we talk about whether or not it makes sense. And a lot of the time, it doesn't make sense. So, good. It's WrestleMania season right now. It's WrestleMania week right now. It's a whole fucking week.
Yeah.
As if 17 hours of WrestleMania wasn't enough. They're like, fuck it, we'll make it the entire week.
Well, I mean, at least they're spreading it out a bit. I'll give them that much.
What's weird is that WrestleMania is split over 2 nights. And yet they still like put a lot of matches on SmackDown that should have been on WrestleMania.
Yeah.
Because I think WrestleMania is going on an hour later now.
Oh.
Both nights, which sucks for us in the UK because now we got to wait till 1 o'clock in the morning for this shit show.
Yeah.
On 2 nights, and I'm like, oh man, I would have rather you just started at 12 and put this stupid Andre the Giant Battle Royale on there. So I would have just watched that. I'm not watching SmackDown. Good God, no way am I watching SmackDown. I'm not falling for that again. No, sir. I forgot what I was talking about. Oh yeah, it's WrestleMania week, and not only is it WrestleMania week, but on the day of this recording, it's Hall of Fame night. The WWE will be showing their Hall of Fame presentation. I suppose it's a presentation.
Yeah.
From 2020 and 2021, we're getting them both. Oh yeah, they're split into 2 different shows. Like they're both 90 minutes long, so you get the 2021, then the 2021 one.
Yep.
And I think that's on tonight. So we were like, wow, Hall of Fame. That's always a good time. Think of all the great times we've had at the Hall of Fame. That one guy got punched in the face by one of the Revival guys.
Yeah, that was pretty fun.
I was so fucking annoyed when it happened. I'm like, how dare that guy go after Bret Hart? Are you kidding me? Out of all the fucking people in that building, you want to go after Bret Hart? God damn. But, he got his comeuppance. He got punched in the face. And all the other great Hall of Fame moments.
Well, how about when Mr. T went on for like 40 minutes about his mum?
Well, she was the lovely lady.
She was.
Do you remember? How do you know? Do you remember whenever Kurt Angle did his speech and he just went mad in the middle of it?
He went mad?
Yeah, I was watching. I'm like, this is all fun. And then he would just, he was like, remember all the comedy bits I used to do with a tiny hat and singing a song? And then he started pouring milk all over himself. And I'm like, Kurt, this is not the place for your mental breakdown.
Yeah.
Yes, we all remember these funny moments. You don't have to pour milk over yourself. You're ruining your suit. You have to sit here for the rest of the show. Thinking of milk. Hope you brought a second suit. Ridiculous. Silliness. So we're both clearly very excited about the Hall of Fame. Which features such wonderful characters going in this year as the Bella Twins. The wonderful Bellas, which, Hall of Fame worthy, debatable.
I would say they probably are. Just because they were the faces of the women's division for so long. Like, maybe they didn't have the greatest matches, but they definitely were all over that division, even though it was like at a time where, the matches weren't kicking a lot of ass or getting a lot of time to be able to kick ass. But I think the fact that they started off coming in as basically models and turned into genuine wrestlers was pretty cool.
Okay, I'll give you that. Fair enough. I don't hate the Bella Twins. I just question whether or not they should be Hall of Fame talent. For example, you're correct in that they were on TV for a long time and they were kind of the face of that division. But couldn't you say somebody like AJ Lee represented the women's division in a much more positive light?
Well, positive, I don't know, like the portrayal of her being crazy maybe wasn't that positive.
But I mean, she stood out. She was very unique, and she talked to a specific part of the audience that nobody else in that division was able to reach. She was bringing like that kind of positivity, body positivity. She cut that thing where she's like, I don't look like these fucking pricks because I'm not a model. I'm just a regular person. And, that does not inspire young people. Like, the way people, like the way Bailey would look at Lita. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I think like AJ Lee is someone who should definitely go in as well.
Exactly. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about some Hall of Fame inductees, Hall of Famers. We're going to talk about some Hall of Famers who maybe don't deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. And then we're going to talk about some people who definitely do deserve to be in the Hall of Fame, but aren't yet. So I would imagine the AJ Lee thing, probably the CM Punk thing.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Boy, the WWE and CM Punk. I mean, I don't think they're on like crazy bad terms anymore. I think a lot of that's just kind of been forgotten about. They're probably still not best friends.
No, I think it's probably more one of Vince's weird sort of grudges that he's holding as well, that he's not going to let go of until he thinks he can probably make some money out of it.
Exactly. And in that way, if he waits till it's actually worth making money off, you can see where he's got a good point there. That's why he's a businessman. That's why he has $1 billion squillion pounds, and we don't have any squillion pounds. 0 squillion. It's ridiculous, But that's because he knows. I guess he knows business better than we do.
I guess so.
For now, at the moment, we could surpass Vince McMahon. How much is he worth? $6 billion?
Is it really that much?
I have no idea.
Jesus.
I have no idea.
2.1 billion.
2.1 billion?
Jesus.
Tell you what, though, it's still a lot of. That's still 2 billion more than either you and me have put together.
Yeah.
He's doing pretty well for himself, Mr. Businessman. So I think you could say AJ Lee and CM Punk both have done enough, arguably more than enough, for that company to warrant a Hall of Fame position. However, at the moment, it looks pretty certain that CM Punk won't be going in anytime soon. Nope. And I kind of think that as a result, AJ Lee might just, feel what's the phrase?
Like backlash from that.
Thank you. This is why you're going to be a billionaire long before I am. Yeah, I feel like she might kind of like get the backlash off that, and through no fault of her own.
Well, you say that, though. At the same time, though, I think there's an outside chance that they might end up inducting AJ Lee before they do CM Punk as sort of, holding out the what's it called? Now I've forgotten what I was talking about. Yeah, but the olive branch. There you go.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's like
I couldn't even jump in and fix it. That's why you're gonna be a billionaire before I will.
Yeah, but I mean, we'll see how it goes. But they both have Hall of Fame worthy careers, like surely. But then this is part of the issue with the Hall of Fame is what makes a Hall of Fame worthy career. Like, what are the requirements? Because I don't know, man. Some of these guys just don't know.
Well, that's the thing. I have had this conversation with somebody I know where we routinely joke about some of the more questionable entries into the Hall of Fame, because I remember when they said Rikishi was going into the Hall of Fame, right? Now, I like Rikishi. I know Rikishi has had quite a career. He wasn't just Rikishi; he was a Sultan before that, and he's done some stuff, right?
Yes, yeah.
Let's put it that way. But I also wouldn't have said he has had a Hall of Fame level career.
No.
Because I don't think he's been like super. People, it's if you went to a show and Rikishi was on the show, you'd be like, "Oh, hot dang, there's Rikishi." But if you went to a show and there wasn't a Rikishi on it, I don't think you would go to the man and say, "I want my money back." I came here for Rikishi and Rikishi only. What is this bullshit? This Rikishi-less bullshit. I want a refund. I want 2 refunds. That's how angry I am. You know? And like, so then we were wondering, because some of the people in the Hall of Fame, you can totally, you'd be an idiot to say they don't deserve to be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
And then there's people like Rikishi, and you're like, okay, now am I the idiot for not thinking he should be in there? And it's interesting because back in the day, everybody had a part to play. Everybody was a solid worker and a strong hand. And so you can see why the WWE would put in people from longer ago than certainly I would remember.
Yeah.
Because they did a lot for the business just by doing what they did. So I could understand some of those kind of. It's like a hard worker award. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's kind of like, yeah, you tried, you turned up, you did your work. We dig it. Thank you for doing that. So I feel like if that's the criteria, then yes, Rikishi certainly fulfills that bracket, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hard worker, fell off the cage. Maybe he fell off the cell into that fucking truck full of sawdust for some reason.
Yeah, yeah.
Did that match really need that?
I mean, it was a 6-person Hell in a Cell, wasn't it? So I guess not.
It was a 6-person Hell in a Cell match with all of their main event talent and Rikishi. And also, because of that, you can see why he was the one that had to go off the fucking side. It's like, Vince McMahon, who do I want to risk injury to? Kurt Angle or Rikishi? But if you were to look at it from a more strict, well, again, like what would you say would be a Hall of Fame like qualifier? How would you define being a Hall of Famer?
Well, I think you got to have a few different considerations. Like, obviously, ideally, you want them to, have won championships or like Royal Rumbles or King of the Rings or something that makes them stand out and makes them feel worthy. But at the same time, as long as they've been involved in major storylines or had that major connection with the crowd, that kind of counts for a lot as well. Like if they were bringing eyes onto the product, then they should be recognized for that. So even though Rikishi, like you say, he had like a bunch of really shitty gimmicks and and he never was world champion or anything like that, but he was a popular act back in the early 2000s, and he's never the biggest star, but he was always like a solid mid-carder to upper mid-carder who was involved in storylines and got the crowd going. So I think, even though I personally wouldn't put him in the Hall of Fame, but ahead of like a bunch of people, I think he deserved to go in there at some point anyway. So I'm okay with that.
Okay, interesting. And I do like how you said if a person is involved with like the big storylines, that's a good qualifier for you, right? And as we know, Rikishi was involved in one of the biggest storylines of all. Who ran over Steve Austin?
Exactly.
The problem he had is he was involved with the worst part of that story, the very end. I mean, I think they should, like, what gets me about that is, why didn't they fucking do something with Rikishi?
Yeah, I think
Like,
they got
they
cold
had
feet,
him in that,
they?
but they had him in that position. Fucking do something with it. Why go to all that effort to make Rikishi that fucking guy and then go, nah? Like, if you didn't think you could do it, don't make him the one that did it.
Yeah, strange booking.
What do I know? I don't know nothing. All right, so Rikishi we've kind of covered. Who else do you think maybe is a little bit questionable?
Well, I had the Bushwhackers flagged from that same Hall of Fame class in 2015, because again, they never really won tag team gold or anything. They weren't really like, major stars, but they were popular enough, and everyone remembers them for the like funny walk and licking each other's heads and stuff. So I guess they're memorable, but you kind of question like, what did they actually do?
I would put the Bushwhackers in ahead of Rikishi.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they were a tag team before the WWF, and they traveled all around the world, and apparently were like fucking real ass kickers around the world.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think that speaks a lot to how good they were. That they were like fucking before they came to the WWF, they were known as like these fucking murderous, vicious heels, and then they came to the WWE and like a total coin flip. Nobody remembers them for that. Everybody remembers them for being these funny goofballs, right?
Mm.
Like, wow, how do you do like such a 180 and just go with it? Because they're paying us money to fucking do this. Like that's if that were me, I'm like, that is a perfect way to wind down my career.
Yeah.
I would be over the fucking moon, to just but to get to work up to that point where you can just sit back and like, I'll just wiggle my arms, and he's gonna pay me like £250,000 a year. Thank you very much. That's a hell of a deal. But like, yeah, like I said, I think they've done enough. Because like, what did Rikishi do before WWF?
Well, he was before WWF. I guess he
Ah.
was. I don't know. He was in the Samoan SWAT team, wasn't he? With I think his brother or his cousin. But I don't. I think they were wrestling in like world class championship wrestling, so they were around. And
Well, yeah, but not making any kind of impact, though, right? If
no,
we're
not
struggling
really.
that hard to figure out what the fuck they did before the WWF, they mustn't have been doing anything like really notable. So you can see why I think the Bushwhackers are a little bit more. They had more of an impact on the business, I think, than Rikishi did.
Mm,
Let's put it that way.
fair enough.
I tell you what I love. I don't know why this pops me, but it does. The Kevin Nash is in there twice.
Yeah, well, him and Sean Waltman apparently now as well.
Now, X-Pac being in there once I can get, right?
Mm.
Because I was never a big fan of like X-Pac, the character, because I don't really know what that means. You know what I mean? Like, I get it. Like, when you break it down, you're like, all right, I get it now. But just if your name's just X-Pac, you're like, the fuck does that even mean?
Yeah.
What? I don't fucking. DX was a weird. When you sit and think about the names of the people in that group, like, what the fuck is any of this? One of you's called Mr. Ass. How does that work? One of them's just called Triple H. What? And this here's the Road Dog.
Yeah.
How intimidating. What a weird. I've never sat down and thought about just how fucking stupid the names. And then just Shawn Michaels.
Yeah.
Just regular old Shawn Michaels. Oh, I made myself laugh in the middle of this. Shawn Michaels, is he in there twice? He must be in there twice.
Yeah, he's in twice.
Right, well deserved. Ric Flair in there twice, well deserved, right?
Mm-hmm.
You look at absolutely those two fucking people have to be in there twice. Hulk Hogan's in there twice, right?
Yeah, he is now, as the NWO's gone in this year as well.
Yeah, and so like, say what you want about Hulk Hogan, he left a bit of an impact on. I wouldn't put him in twice. Well, maybe. I mean,
I would. Yeah.
He did a lot. He did a lot of, very impactful for the business. X-Pac. I mean, no offense to X-Pac, but we just named Shawn Michaels, Ric Flair, and Hulk Hogan. Right? 3 monumentally important wrestlers. And no offense to X-Pac at all, but you're no Ric Flair.
What about Booker T? He's in there twice.
Booker T's interesting. Now, Booker T, I don't know, man. See, this is where it starts to get strange, right? Because then you feel like you do have to kind of get into the specifics of things, right?
Yeah.
Because Shawn Michaels being in the Hall of Fame makes sense. But what's the difference between Shawn Michaels going into the Hall of Fame and Shawn Michaels in DX going into the Hall of Fame?
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, how do you like? That's hard to tell the difference apart, because that was part of his career that got him to where he is, but wasn't necessarily the pinnacle of his success. So it's very hard to separate those two kind of things, right?
Yeah.
But Booker T's in there for being a solo guy and for being part of a tag team. And you can say, well, both of those had a really big impact on the business. Like Booker T as a solo competitor made big waves at the end of WCW and in WWE as like a really successful black guy going on and being able to make a really good career. World
Mm-hmm.
heavyweight champion, right? Really important. But at the same time, Harlem Heat did a lot for tag team wrestling.
Yeah.
They were really, really good too. So you could see why both of those individually could go into the Hall of Fame.
But would you say, like, if, we take someone like, say, Edge, he's already in there, would you put him in again as Edge and Christian? Because they were obviously a really influential tag team back in the early 2000s and had a hell of a run together. So is that enough to put him in twice, do you reckon?
I think yes, I would, because if you look at, I would say this is different from the Shawn Michaels thing,
Yeah.
because Edge and Christian as a unit, as a group, were a really important tag team in that specific time frame. 1999 to 2001, those fuckers were on fire. They were so good, and they were part of a really good tag team division. They were a cog in that machine, but a really important cog. So I could see why they would go in as a team. And then Edge himself, as a singles competitor, did so much on his own that you could see why he would also be in there as a solo guy, right?
Yeah.
That makes sense. But then again, if you look at what X-Pac did in DX and then also what X-Pac did in NWO, that feels strange when you break it down into individual people, right?
Yeah.
If you look at Hulk Hogan in the NWO, you can see why he would be inducted for that. But if you look at X-Pac in the NWO, you don't see that, because he didn't do anything in the group, right?
No, that's what kind of baffles me about his inclusion with the NWO this year. Because surely, if you're going to do the NWO, you just do the three main players. Yeah.
Right. A lot of people were like, Bishop's going to be there too. I'm like, fuck that. It's the three people. It's the three main guys, right? That's, honest to God, that's what it should be. It doesn't make any sense to do it any other way.
Yeah.
But then again, like, then if you break it down a little bit more, Kevin Nash, as much as I love that guy, right? If you put him in as the members of the NWO, totally makes sense, right? 100%. That's a crazy group that changed the world. But then if you do that, you don't need to put him in as Kevin Nash.
Exactly, yeah.
Because outside of the NWO, he had to run as Diesel, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, historically speaking, it was like one of the worst drawing world championship runs of all time.
Right. So like that's not a Hall of Fame worthy career. At least we didn't think so. At some point we were like, just winning the belt doesn't mean you're a Hall of Fame contender. Great Khali. You know what I mean? I guess all that shit's out the window. But so like it's hard to break it down like that. For certain people it gets kind of blurry.
Yeah.
And I think if you look at, what's funny is if you just look at X-Pac as Sean Waltman as the guy, absolutely he should be on the Hall of Fame because he was a key worker in the Attitude Era, but he was also one of those guys who was, people used to look at Shawn Michaels and say he was too small to be in the main event. Look at X-Pac. He was smaller than Shawn Michaels, right? And he was out there, and he was able to hang with the bigger looking guys and make it look believable. It wasn't totally far-fetched. It wasn't like Marco Stunt fighting Keane, right? It felt believable and like an underdog story, like watching Rey Mysterio against people.
Yeah.
So I'm like, if you just put him in as the guy who contributed an awful lot to the wrestling business, he literally broke his ass for this business. I would say, yeah, I would put Sean Waltman in. but putting him in as X-Pac and as Six, I don't get it. You know what I mean? But then again, like, are we getting too specific about it? Because the WWE are always a little bit vague about their Hall of Fame, right?
Yeah.
They're just kind of like, whatever, this is whatever Vince says, right? I guess that's just the way it always is. But it's always a little bit like it feels weird saying that Hulk Hogan and X-Pac are both 2-time Hall of Famers.
Yeah, there's a big disparity between the two of them.
But I also think X-Pac should totally be in the Hall of Fame. So there you go.
Who among the list of Hall of Famers that we currently have would you say stands out as someone who maybe shouldn't be in there, in your opinion?
Okay, now I assume what we're doing is we're gonna just disregard the celebrity wing.
Yeah, I'd say that's not worth touching.
Right, because we could sit here all day arguing about whether or not Kid Rock deserves to be in the WWE Hall of Fame.
I mean, he didn't even do anything in WWE.
I like a lot of my friends, they love, like, you know, Star Trek and stuff. And they went to see William Shatner doing a show last year, right before the fucking pandemic hit. So, you know, they love him. And I was like, but they're not really big wrestling fans. So I was like, hey guys, here's a funny sentence you probably never expected to hear in your lifetime. But William Shatner is going into the WWE Hall of Fame. And they were like, what? Why? I'm like, well, because apparently he did something with Jerry Lawler. And also one time he hosted an episode of Raw. And they're like, well, that's good enough for me. Like, you know, what the fuck is, what does that even mean? No, clearly they ran out a long time ago of fucking people to put into the Hall of Fame. You don't have to do a celebrity each time.
There's some celebrities you can do and should do. Like, I'm still amazed that they haven't put Cyndi Lauper in there, considering she was such a big part of the first WrestleMania and like selling that to the MTV generation and stuff. She was a huge selling point, and you've got Wendy Richter in there already, so why not add Cyndi Lauper as well?
Yeah, like, why the fuck not? We're gonna have to get Vince McMahon on the phone again. Ridiculous. Is that who William Perry is? Is he in the celebrity wing?
Yeah, he's the football player who wrestled Bam Bam Bigelow in the main event of WrestleMania 11, I think it was.
Okay, I mean, already this guy's got more pedigree than a lot of the other guys on the show because he actually got in the ring and wrestled. But then again, does Dennis Rodman go in?
Definitely not, no.
But he wrestled that match. He wrestled 2 matches, didn't he?
He wrestled at least 2 matches. I think it might have been 3. We did talk about this a couple of weeks ago, but I completely forgot.
We forgot then as well. We were like, we can name at least 2. There might have been another one. I don't know. But, like, you know, he got in the ring. Jay Leno. He got in the ring. I watched that match, by the way. You'll never guess what.
Was it awful?
Oh, yes, sir. Don't put Jay Leno in the ring.
Who'd have thunk it?
It was ridiculous. But you know what the best part was? I don't know if the music that he came out to was the actual music that he came out to on the day, or if that music is actually the theme music to his own show. But it was the absolute worst music you could walk out to for a wrestling match. Although I saw that that Tony Khan's got the Pixies "Where's My Mind" for Orange Cassidy.
Yeah.
That's an awful song to walk out to as a wrestler.
Yeah.
Because it's not at all impactful.
I love the song, but it's
a great song. But if you're like a fucking wrestler, you're like, here we go, time to kick some ass. And then that song comes on, you're like, oh, I'm just gonna do something else. Like, it's so inappropriate.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the thinking was there. I mean, maybe it'd be better once there's a live crowd and they can kind of sing along
Sing
with the
along,
whole.
but it's not about singing along with the fucking song. If that's what it is, why doesn't Tony Khan just like put on gigs? Why don't you just put on Pixie gigs and you can go and sing along to that shit? Where it would make sense instead of a wrestling match. You fucking prick. Anyway, so I don't know. I've kind of looked through the big list. We got a big list here,
Mm,
and a lot of these people do, in some way, I would say, deserve to be in the Hall of Fame.
yeah.
What about Big Boss Man?
See, I kind of ummed and ahed when I saw he was in there earlier, but I think I would keep him because, he's a guy who was a star like in the late 80s into the sort of late 90s, early 2000s, really. So he had longevity. He had like a good main event run when he first came in and sort of, he was feuding with Hulk Hogan at one point. But he also had a good run as like Big Bubba Rogers back in the old NWA as well before that. And, you know, he was involved in pretty memorable storylines as well. Like everyone remembers the whole Al Snow storyline. So,
Well, not just that. Something else a Big Boss Man did. We all remember.
oh yeah, of course. And who can forget his feud with Big Show?
I mean, that's immediately what I thought of. Him dragging that coffin down the road. I'm really annoyed of the way they did that whole thing, because they give the Big Show the belt, and he put him in a feud with the Big Boss Man,
Mm,
which was really annoying to me. It was because before that, the Big Boss Man had in no way been portrayed as a main eventer,
no.
and then suddenly he was put in an angle with the Big Show. Like, if you're gonna do it, I don't think that's the best way to get this guy over.
Yeah.
And given what they did with the Big Boss Man, they had him steal the Big Show's father's casket out of the fucking cemetery and drive it down the street or whatever. He had it hooked onto the back of his car. He drove away. He stole the Big Show's dead father.
And Big
For
Show
some
jumps
reason.
on the casket as well. Don't forget that.
I almost had forgot about that. That's so funny. Right. So like that's a very heel thing to do.
Oh, big time.
But look at what they did. They had him kill a dog and cook it up and give it to Al Snow. They had him steal a man's dead father. And that didn't get this guy over as a despicable heel.
Yeah, it's
You know
kind
what I
of
mean?
baffling.
Isn't that unbelievable? Like, so there was still some kind of disconnect between the Big Boss Man and the audience.
Mm.
Like, how does that, like, can you imagine if somebody in All Elite Wrestling had got given that command by Tony Khan? They're like, hey man, you're gonna kill a dog and feed it to somebody, that'll get you some heel heat, and then you're gonna steal a corpse and just attach it to the back of your car and drive away. They would go giddy. They're gonna be like, oh boy, Jim Cornette's gonna hate this. Our ratings are gonna go through the roof.
Hmm.
But Big Boss Man, I don't know, he just couldn't pull it off somehow.
It's a shame because I always liked him as a wrestler as well. Like I thought he was solid in the ring for a guy his size, and well, I mean, like in the late 90s anyway, he'd lost a lot of weight, so he was in better condition. But like I just kind of remember him as like a guy from my childhood. Like he's one of those wrestlers who does stick out in my head, whether as the original kind of corrections officer or as the like SWAT vest wearing uh dog murderer.
You went to dog murder before corpse kidnapper?
Yeah. I mean,
I
maybe he
mean,
didn't have evil intentions with the corpse though. Maybe he was just taking it to a different grave or something.
how many times in history has somebody stolen a corpse from a graveyard and not had ill intentions for it?
Yeah, well, exactly. Like the law of averages suggested that this is probably the first time.
Yeah, it's gonna be anybody. It's gonna be Big Boss Man. Oh, that's funny. So I agree with you in that Big Boss Man to me always seemed like a good hand in the ring, right? He always seemed to kind of stand out, whether it was his gimmicks or whatever it was, right? There was always something about him that set him apart from everybody else, which was interesting. And he always seemed like a decent guy in the ring. Like he was one of those dependable hands that could go, you know.
Yeah.
So I think from that kind of point of view, yeah. And also he had a very, like you said, he had a very, very long career. When did he, the whole of the 90s,
Mm.
So yeah, the Big Boss Man, maybe, yeah, let's put him in the Hall of Fame. But then you get into the conversation of how is the Big Boss Man in the Hall of Fame whenever, Winkledink isn't? I couldn't, off the top of my head, I couldn't think of what Owen Hart. I mean, well, I'm not okay. We know why Owen Hart isn't in the Hall of Fame,
Yeah.
but somebody like that, there's always an argument like, well, why did they pick the Big Boss Man over this guy?
Yeah.
So, is there anybody you think that should be in the Hall of Fame that isn't?
Oh, there's loads of guys. I mean, we mentioned
Kid Rock because he's already in it.
He should be a two-time Hall of Famer.
Give him all the rings.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like some of the big guys who are missing, like Bam Bam Bigelow, who we talked about, like having that match with Lawrence Taylor and headlining WrestleMania, but obviously on top of that, he also kind of bounced all over the place and wrestled everywhere, kind of had good matches with everyone. Like he had those kind of memorable moments as well, like his ECW stuff was full of them, with like the series of matches he had with Taz where they like crash through the ramp and stuff, and him throwing Spike Dudley into the crowd. There's loads of stuff which makes him stand out, and you think, that's deserving of recognition. But then if you're going to put Bam Bam in, like, why not someone like Vader as well, who was arguably at one time like the best big man in the business, super stiff and like genuine monster, but like surprisingly agile as well for a guy his size, and could do like impressive moonsaults and all that kind of jazz. And he had championship success. He had memorable feuds with like Sting and Cactus Jack and others, and he had that crossover with Japan as well. Like he went all over the place and was a success pretty much everywhere he went, aside from WWF really. But
Yeah, I mean, hard to argue with those. I definitely think both Vader and Bam Bam should totally be in. Don't you think it's super weird that the guy Bam Bam fought at WrestleMania, who isn't a pro wrestler, went into the Wrestling Hall of Fame before he did?
Yeah, it's
like
what
the fuck? How the fuck does that work?
Yeah.
Good gravy. So because of that, I feel like you should put Bam Bam in. But also, if you look at it, he's worked in all three of those big promotions and done pretty well in each of them. Like you said, he did a very good job in ECW. I remember that shit from ECW. Him and Taz falling through the ring, which at the time you're like, whoa, he broke the ring,
Yeah.
Obviously now you're like, oh, it's a gimmick ring. But at the time it was super cool. And then his work in the WWF, and then even, he was in the WCW for a little bit too.
Yeah, New Jersey Triad.
Yeah, he won the tag titles or whatever. So I don't see why he wouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. Like, who did he piss off? I guess Vince McMahon. A lot of the time, the fucking answer is Vince McMahon. But I'm sure he could put things behind him and induct Bam Bam. I think the same with Vader. Like Vader got a rough deal in the WWF whenever he was there. Because he happened to be there when Shawn Michaels was there, who apparently didn't really want to work with Vader.
Yeah.
Which is a tricky business to try and navigate around. I mean, WWF just wasn't the place for Vader, which is a shame because look at him.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Like, you got to be an idiot to not be able to do business with a guy like Vader. My goodness. The shit you could have done when they were like, no. Well, to be fair, they went, no, we're going to go with Shawn Michaels instead. And you're like, well, they do have a good point. You know, Shawn Michaels is pretty fucking good. But to not put Vader in the Hall of Fame at all is ridiculous. Like, look at that guy. He's a fucking monster.
Yeah, exactly.
Rip Cactus Jack's ear off. He can't be trusted. Yeah, those are all really good. I like that. Who else do you think should be? We've talked briefly about Owen Hart, and that's a complicated, sticky issue. Owen Hart deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. He's done enough. He's a memorable character. Everybody loved Owen. Everybody. But due to the circumstances behind his death and the ripple effect that's had between the company and the estate of Owen Hart, it's very tricky to try and get a deal like the Hall of Fame negotiated in a concise manner.
I mean, it's never gonna happen. If you've seen the what's it, the Vice series, the Dark Side of the Ring, the episode about Owen Hart, you can just totally understand why, you know, his wife and his kids want nothing to do with the wrestling at all, or you know, especially not WWE, who, you know, they blame for his death, which they absolutely should. So, you know, I mean, that's a door I don't think is ever going to open, which is a shame for like all of Owen Hart's fans, you know, all over the world. But I mean, you kind of have to respect the wishes of the family there.
Exactly. And that's, again, where things get a little bit sticky, because people will say, well, it's not a real Hall of Fame if Owen Hart isn't in it. But then they'll also say it's not a real Hall of Fame because Vince McMahon just dreamed it up, right?
Yeah.
In which case, you can just still say Owen Hart is a Hall of Famer. Because he is. He had that career. You know, memorable character, wonderful wrestler, lovely guy. So because they can't officially induct him, I feel like he is, because there is no physical Hall of Fame, right? It's just words on a spreadsheet, really.
Yeah.
You could pretty much like put Owen Hart in there with a little asterisks. You know what I mean? It's like he's basically in.
Yeah.
We all know he's in there, right? Vince McMahon would want him to be in there.
Absolutely.
People in that company want him to be in there, but they can't put him in, right? Just because, and like you said, you got to respect their wishes of the family. Understandable, completely understandable. But I feel like we can all kind of like, he is in it, you know? Also, that makes us feel better about Xbox being in there twice. A guy I always think, and I think he's going to be in there in the next 5 years, is William Regal.
Yeah, he's one that I kind of was considering as well.
We love William Regal. That guy he's like a true pro wrestler because he can do everything. That guy can work technical really well, really good technical wrestler, but he can brawl because he grew up in Blackpool and he got trained by Fit Finlay. He can brawl, you know. Yeah. He can do comedy. He can do serious. He gets like the facials just perfect. You know, his in-ring stuff, the way he gets about, the way he carries himself in the ring. Everything about him is like the consummate professional, the pinnacle of being a pro wrestler. And it's a shame that, you know, the circumstances haven't allowed him to get to the top of the wrestling mountain, shall I say. But at the same time, if you were to talk to, I guarantee every single wrestler who's worked with William Regal, except maybe Goldberg, now that I think about it, that they're gonna tell you that he's one of the best.
Yeah.
Because they know that they know how he works and that the way he works and that he is just an impeccable guy. And having him on TV, like, it was always good at him being like the general manager or whatever, because he can talk. Again, he can talk, right? He can do everything. This motherfucker can do everything. He can he can talk. Oh God, can he talk? Such a heel, wonderful. So you keep him on TV as like a general manager, or whatever. He's brilliant. And then they put him in NXT, where he's like the face of NXT. The general manager there. It's perfect. Yeah. He's the right guy for that. He suits that role down to a fucking T. It's perfect. That guy, William Regal, I don't think he's going to be the general manager of NXT forever. And as soon as he retires, or as soon as he takes a step back, he's going into that Hall of Fame. Let me tell you this as well about William Regal. He's so stinking talented, but he's also incredibly humble. You ever listen to him talking about himself or listen to other people talking about how great he is? He's so humble. He's like, I'm not that good. I'm like, not that good. you're one of the best. Wow, you just want to shake him. Like, look how good you are, Good Lord, he's such a lovely man. I would happily vote for William Regal to go in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I wouldn't argue with that at all.
Let me tell you this as well. We were talking a little bit about those like workhorse kind of guys, the guys who put in the work, like Rikishi or Big Boss Man, who might not have reached the top of the mountain, but put in the work, solid hands. I'd like to say Chavo Guerrero.
Yeah, that'd be a nice one, considering he's always been in the shadow of Eddie and like arguably other members of his family as well. Like, I think he's had a pretty damn good career, carved out his own kind of niche, and he's like carried it on afterwards as well with like some of the work he's done like over in Lucha Underground and producing over there, as well as like he's involved in that new show about The Rock, where he's like choreographing fights and stuff, which he also did for the Netflix series Glow.
Yeah, exactly. Like he's a really good hand to have. I think I figured this out once I was watching that terrible show with Jay Leno on it. Because Chavo was on that. I think he was fighting Stevie Ray over the television championship that apparently belonged to neither of them. And he was doing his gimmick where he was crazy,
Yes.
And he was working kind of with Eddie Guerrero, and you're like, look at how far this guy's come. Like, if you look at him now, consummate professional again, you can put him in there with anybody. But also, the shit they gave him, Kerwin White, not an easy angle to get over, but he gave it a go. Like, he didn't half-ass it. He went for it because that's his job. And he did it well. And if you look at what he's doing now, he's carrying over his knowledge of pro wrestling and kind of bleeding it out into other industries, which is exactly what the WWE wants.
Yeah.
Chavo Guerrero, man. I think if they don't put him in, they're missing a real big blind spot, because I think a lot of people talk about like underrated wrestlers and stuff. I would say Chavo Guerrero's got to be up there as not only like an underrated wrestler, but a guy that people wouldn't even think of putting on that list.
No, absolutely. I didn't consider him until you said it, but once you did, I'm totally sold on the idea. It
makes sense, right? But that's what I mean. Sometimes people would just kind of forget about him. I'm like, you don't know how good this fucking guy is. I think I would like to see him in the Hall of Fame. How about this? Right, here's a wild card one for you. Do you have a wild card one?
Yeah, I've got one.
All right, who should go first?
You go first.
Okay. What about this? This is a real wild card one. What about Chris Candido?
See, I would love to see him in there. I can kind of see why he isn't at the moment, because if you go and buy his WWF run, it wasn't very spectacular, but his body of work over his career was incredible, and like especially in ECW as part of the Triple Threat, and to a lesser extent when he moved over to WCW, because WCW was kind of in a shambles at the time. So
not even Chris Candido could save them.
no, but I mean, he was such a great wrestler and an entertaining sort of character as well. Like if you see him cutting promos and stuff, and yeah, I would definitely go for Chris Candido.
Not just cutting promos though, but just again like the William Regal thing, the way he kind of conducts himself in the ring, the way he walks around the ring, the way he moves. Nobody acts the way Chris Candido did. You know what I mean? He was a one of a kind guy that was a little bit larger than life, a little bit like William Regal, where he knew that he was trying to express to an entire auditorium full of people exactly what he's about, and he could do it. He had that personality about him. You said maybe not his WWE body of work would entitle him to be in the WWE Hall of Fame, which makes sense. But I would also argue Abdullah the Butcher's WWE work, I don't know if that would qualify him for the WWE Hall of Fame. I don't know if he ever worked there.
Yeah.
So I think if you just look at his career as a whole, former NWA champion, Chris Candido.
Did he
not
win?
Not Abdullah the Butcher. Was Abdullah the Butcher? Maybe. I don't think so. Yeah, he won the belt. I think he was the one that won the belt right before Dan Severn won it.
Okay. So sort of in the dark years of the NWA.
A little bit of a transitional champion. However, champion nonetheless.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I would love to see Candido in there. I think that'd be pretty cool. Okay, hit me with your wild card, and it better not be a third ring for Kid Rock.
So for my wild card one, I was going to go for someone who actually never stepped foot in a wrestling ring, but had like a huge impact on the wrestling business because, the stuff he did basically ended up being the sound of, WWE over 20 odd years or however many. And that's Jim Johnson, who was responsible for all the theme music that, we kind of recognize and still rock out to if you're like me. So yeah, like he definitely deserves to be in the Hall of Fame for his contributions, I'd say.
Yeah, he was the sound of the Attitude Era.
And before that as well. I mean, he kind of came in the early 90s, and you think of the Ultimate Warrior's theme and Bret Hart's theme, all those like classics from those early days, all right the way up to like the Brood and stuff, and Kane and all that kind of thing. And yeah, I mean, he was just iconic, really.
I think so. I mean, if you he had music, you can't look at it. But you're right. If you listen to what he did, the music he made, it was so distinct. Like, even if you look at the beginning of the Attitude Era and before that, when the songs were starting to sound a little bit like, not quite generic rock, but you know what I mean? Like, they still stood out and they were still interesting, and they still sounded like music that people would walk out to have a fight to.
Yes.
Which I think was important. And then they figured out how to make the sounds and the songs tailor to the person, which I think is a really important thing, because you hear this iconic music and then the guy comes out and it's like a musical representation of the person you're about to see. And I think that's the skill all on its own. That's incredibly hard to do. And to be able to do that multiple times with multiple different people and multiple different personalities, very, very difficult. And to still keep them all sounding cool and interesting, not an easy task, man. And he was able to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Able to do it every time. So you got to say fair play for that one. That was a good one. I would vote him for the Hall of Fame too, because he really did contribute a lot to the business. That really helped that vibe, because we've talked about this before on a different episode about how like bad music can really, like, I don't know, Where's My Mind by the Pixies. can really just ruin the vibe. You know what I mean? If you don't get the song right, it ruins the vibe. And you don't want to ruin the vibe before the match even begins.
Yes.
You know, we talked about this with the NWOB team. With their stupid garbage theme that's so diddly and it doesn't sound imposing at all. And then Buff Bagwell and Virgil come out and you're like, well, I was right. This isn't imposing at all. This is just a load of shit, right? You gotta if they're not taking it seriously, why would the fans take it seriously, right? So I think the music is a really big part of that too. And I would agree. Yeah, Jim Johnson, put him in the Hall of Fame. Phone up Vince McMahon, tell him to put all the people we mentioned into the Hall of Fame. And also CM Punk and AJ Lee, especially.
I mean, there's so many more that we haven't discussed that we could do as well, but I think we're probably coming up on time, aren't we?
We're getting pretty close. Let me ask you one thing real quick. All right. Let's see if we can come up with something really quick. Next year, they're going to have a Hall of Fame. Now, Batista was supposed to be in this year, and due to unforeseen circumstances, he couldn't make it this year. So I assume he's going in next year as the headliner, right?
Well, I would say someone different as a headliner.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. I was like, next year, for the next year's Hall of Fame, who would you put in as your headliner, as your big guy to draw in the crowd to want to come and see this prestigious event? Who would you have as your marquee main event inductee?
Well, considering next year's...
X-Pac again.
No, man. Kid Rock. Come on.
Kid Rock and X-Pac 3 times each. Oh, wow. Double header.
No, like next year's WrestleMania is in Texas. So it's kind of got to be The Undertaker, surely.
The Undertaker?
Yes.
Oh, boy, oh, boy. Would you be really good if they had him like coming out of a crypt or something? I'm like, you know, if they made it like Kurt Angle pouring milk over his head, it's kind of jarring. Doesn't really make sense with the tone of the rest of the evening. I would do the same thing with the Undertaker. I'd have him like come out of a fucking there's a big mound of dirt on the stage and they're like doing the whole ceremony and nobody notices, and then right at the end like a hand comes out of the dirt.
No, I think you've got it backwards. I think they should put him in the casket after he's done his speeches and stuff, and that's how he like buries the character, and then he doesn't have to be Undertaker anymore because it's been, you know, buried and put away in the crypt or whatever.
Oh, I saw somebody, I don't remember who it was, somebody was talking about that, and they're like, if you're gonna retire the Undertaker, like kill him.
Yeah.
Feed him, put his ashes in the urn, full circle. And I'm
there you go.
Oh, it was PCO. PCO said, I want to have a match against The Undertaker. As a proper retirement match, he should lose. His ashes should be put in the urn. I'm like, that makes sense, dude. Totally makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But I would love that. Right, do that next year at WrestleMania. I hope you're still talking to Vince McMahon on the phone.
Yeah, I've got him on speed dial.
Oh, sweet. But he's really pissed at me constantly asking him questions. And he's not listening, obviously, which is disappointing. Are there any other people you want to put in the Hall of Fame real quick? Or should we wrap things up?
I mean, there's so many names we didn't get around to mentioning, like, you know, Brian Pillman, the Dynamite Kid, Sable is someone I thought was worthy of contention, even though she didn't have like the best wrestling career. Like between the ropes, she was still such a big star in the 90s and had such a huge influence on the Attitude Era that I think she deserves recognition as well.
I don't know about that.
Yeah.
I think that like Dynamite Kid, if Bulldog's going in by himself, I don't think Dynamite Kid's going in. You know, unless they do the old double. Bulldog's in there twice. Remember whenever X-Pac was in the British Bulldogs? He's in a 4th time. Boy, he gets around, doesn't he? I can't think of anybody else off the top of my head. And that's, you know, I'm sure as soon as this is over, I'll have plenty of people ringing right in my ear about who should be in the Hall of Fame. But right now, my mind is drawn a blank. So anybody angrily out there going, oh, you didn't mention this guy, leave in the comments. We'll read him. We want to check him out. I want to go, oh, yeah, why didn't I pick Howard Finkel? Is Howard Finkel in?
Yeah, he's
I think
in it already.
Hardfinkel's in there. Good. Put him in 3 times. Put Hardfinkel in. God dang it. Scotty Duhati isn't in there once.
What a travesty.
Rikishi's in there, but that's Scotty Duhati. Are you kidding me? This is bullshit. But yes, if you've got any more Hall of Famers that you think should be in but aren't, or who are in but shouldn't be, let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear from you guys. But in the meantime, we'll be back next week with another amazing episode, which will probably be some kind of WrestleMania recap on this whole week's shenanigans, including the Hall of Fame. So that might be a long one. Should we do the whole week?
I think maybe try and narrow it down a little bit.
Next week, 17-hour podcast. Well, I tell you, it'll be a surprise. So find out when you click on the video next week. So make sure to subscribe so you get to stay in touch, etc., etc. But we'll be back next week with a WrestleMania roundup. It'll be amazing. But until then, we will see you guys later. So take it easy.